Welcome in to It's Always Sunny in Cheese Kingdom. I'm Austin. Find me on Twitter at Real Bird Lawyer, Bird Law Expert on Blue Sky. Here with me, as always, my co-host Taylor at Taylor_Wit on Twitter, Aisic, Aisick on Blue Sky. That's It's Always Sunny
No.
in Cheese Kingdom, which is the name of the show. And it is playoff time. What is going on?
Well, don't type it in the way Austin just said it because he said Aisick, and of course it is Iasick.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that
sure.
being said, it's playoff time, which means only one thing to our listeners. That is another conversation with friend of the show, writer for The Ringer, Rany Jazayerli on Twitter at Jazayerli. Rany, your annual ski trip means a lot more this year with Denver in the playoffs. How are you preparing for sharing your time with fellow playoff participant Broncos fans?
That is an excellent question. Hi guys.
Hi.
I warmed up for the annual guys trip to Colorado by taking a family trip to Montana. My
Okay.
first time ever in Montana. We went to Big Sky. Very nice. Very nice ski area. And as always, the number 15 red jersey flew proudly. Um, I think the whole time I was there, I think I only saw two Broncos jerseys. Both of them
Oh,
were
interesting.
Patrick Surtain jerseys,
Sure. Yeah.
which I think in and of itself, if the jersey
It's
your
selling. It's
fans
selling.
are buying is not the quarterback's jersey, it's
Yeah,
usually not a good sign.
yeah.
Yeah.
Granted, it won't be long before we see the Bo Nix jerseys out there, but
Right.
um, everyone knew where I stood. But yes, I'm going into the heart of Broncos country in 2.5 weeks. So I certainly hope that they will and assume that they will be eliminated by then. So we'll be ready. We'll be ready to go. Let's just the point. The key though is to make sure that the Chiefs are not eliminated because I've been wearing that jersey for 6 years now in mid to late January, and the rule is I get to wear it as long as the Chiefs are still in the playoffs. And I've yet to take it off. So pretty awesome. Came within 13 seconds of it on one trip, but
Oh,
nope. Got to wear it the next day. Probably prouder than I ever had before. So
I love to hear it. Well, that's good. Let's start off with a vibe check. Just, this season it's been up and down. Just to recap for anyone tuning in for the first time right now, which I wouldn't blame you. It's Chiefs, so, might as well not start paying attention till January. But started off confident on the back-to-backs, Super Bowls, and then Hollywood goes down early. Rasheed goes down a little bit later. Pacheco gets hurt. They bring Kareem in. They trade for DeAndre Hopkins. Jalen Watson goes down, which does a number on the defense for a bit. Harrison Butker's down for a little bit. They finally, after all of that, lose their first game of the year at Buffalo. They skate by the AFC West at home on three absolute miracle wins. They stare down the barrel of 3 games in 11 days against two playoff teams and proceed to outscore those teams 77-36 and finally start winning games by more than skin of their teeth, and they lock up the 1 seed. So, Randy, as we sit here January 9th, before the AFC playoffs get underway this weekend, and you're thinking about the Chiefs, where's your confidence level? Where's the vibes at? How are you feeling about your team?
weird year, guys. Weird year.
Yeah.
And how nothing more appropriate than losing the final game by such a large margin that their final point differential ended up being, I mean, less than well, certainly less than the Broncos, but like
Yeah, they
less
were
less than
11th in football
yeah,
in point
like I said,
differential.
11 less than 10 other teams in football. The worst point differential of the Andy Reid era, actually.
Yep,
Their previous low, I think, was plus 72. They ended at plus 59.
59. Yeah.
Um, so the vibe check, you know, Austin, you've become somewhat notorious this year for your meme.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
congratulations on that for entering the realm of was it Pro Football Talk
Yes,
giving
Pro Football Talk. Yeah.
giving you your props for these games are horrible. We want to kill myself. I want to comment on that because while the meme is certainly true in a literal sense that these games were torturous. I never felt tortured as a whole because the game, each individual game, after the Ravens and Bengals game, after the Chiefs started at 2-0, the fate of the season never felt the fate of the playoffs never felt like it was on the line at any given time. Even when they were struggling to knock off the Panthers and the Raiders, and
Hmm.
needed a miracle block kick to beat the Broncos. Like they were already 8-0 before they played the Broncos, so it was a loss in any of those games would have been annoying, would have been humbling. But coming off of what happened last year, when they were not just barely losing to bad teams, they were getting beaten soundly by the Raiders on Christmas. Like the mere fact of a loss would not have bothered me. It would have simply been, how does this affect the Chiefs' playoff odds? And they were already at a point where their playoff odds were excellent. So I didn't really care in the big picture. I could divorce myself from what was happening today, this afternoon on the field, and not worry too much in the big picture. That all goes
Yep.
out the window right now, right? Like
Hmm.
now the meme moves into, a completely different level. Every boss now is the final boss.
Yep.
So we absolutely cannot afford, like, these games. If they win a game, in the playoffs, like they beat the Raiders, the Broncos, the Panthers, the Ravens, the Bengals, like, yeah, I may need to, adjust my medication regimen afterwards. Like, those are going to be extremely stressful situations. Having said that, and with the caveat that, any given Sunday, any given game, and God knows as Chiefs fans, we know what it looks like when a good team plays a mediocre team in January, and you just have 3 bad hours and anything can happen. But I feel pretty damn good. I
Sure.
mean, the team is as healthy as it has been since, I'm not just this season, since, like, Charles Amenu blew out his knee, and Joe Tooney like tore his pec, right?
Mhm.
I guess in the middle of the AFC Championship game last year is when Amenu went down, I think, right?
Yep. That's
Um,
Yep.
right.
and I mean, here we are. We're at the point where even McCole Hardman might be back. Not that it really matters, but it's like I'd almost forgotten he'd been on the team, which is like the sixth consecutive year that I've almost forgotten Nicole Hardman is part of the team, and then he ends up doing something important. Um, Obviously, the Jalen Watson news is, the most important, and in some ways maybe the most unexpected news, on the injury front here in the last month or so. And it's hard to overstate how important him coming back is. Like, I would rather, at this point, given the personnel of this team, I would rather have Jalen Watson. The news that Jalen Watson's coming back, to me, is better news than if we had suddenly gotten the miraculous news that Rashee Rice was coming back.
Sure. I
I
get it.
really believe it. Just, they went out and they had time to find a replacement for Rashee Rice. They got DeAndre Hopkins. It's not exactly a 1-to-1, but the point is they went out and got
Mhm.
talented veteran wide receiver who knew his role and could excel in that role. They obviously got Hollywood Brown back, and then they had Xavier Worthy develop all season long, so that the receiving core now is the best it's been since Tyreek Hill was on the team. I
Sure.
mean, right this very moment, with Xavier Worthy having, like, not fully blossomed, but blossomed as much as you could expect from a rookie, and with
Getting
Hollywood
there.
Brown looking healthy, that is the best top three wide receiving core they've had in 3 years.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And
until Tyreek comes back.
well, exactly, until our next regular season game, yes. And of
Right,
course,
right.
I'm saying, the best wide receiving core since 2021. And meanwhile, the Chiefs have won both Super Bowls that have been played in the interim. So,
Right,
um,
right.
so that part of it's great. But on defense, I mean, having, obviously, they traded L'Jarius Sneed before the season. Um, and Jalen Watson was expected to be one of the guys they called on to step up in his absence, and looked, better than he did even as a rookie early this season before he got hurt. But everyone else that they've tried in that spot has had issues. Whether it's in terms of the ability to press, like in the case of, Nazi Johnson, or the ability to just cover and not make stupid mistakes like Joshua Williams, right? So, like, uh, having Jalen Watson potentially come back and be the second cornerback behind McDuffie, it feels to me like that completes the defense, in the way that getting well, him and then obviously Menahu as well, right? In the way that
Yeah.
getting DeAndre Hopkins, in getting Pacheco back, all the offense feels like it's already been complete, but now getting the defense back to maybe not quite last year's form, but close to it with a much better offense, I feel like, with a bunch of receivers that can actually catch the ball. And like last year, the team and Patrick Mahomes having had a year to kind of figure out what works, what doesn't work. I feel like Patrick is starting to get a little bit more touch on the deep ball again. He really struggled with that most of the season. He, finally hit with Justin Watson of all people. Um, and then just having 23 days off after playing 3 games in 11 days, and it's like nobody of any importance who wasn't a rookie like Jaden Hicks played in the Broncos game. And I will say, like my number one preference for that game would have been for the Chiefs to beat the Broncos. It's the
Of
Broncos
course.
knocking them out. Like I did want to win that game, and I'm disappointed they did not win that game. But if they were not going to win the game, the best result and the most hilarious result certainly is what happened, which is they just got the absolute tar kicked out of them. It's just, I mean, by half, I was just like, well, you know what, we're gonna do this. Let's do this spectacularly. In part because then it does kind of knock out your season statistics and point differential, and maybe makes people,
Under
stupidly kind of just
like
underestimate
value.
the
Yeah,
Chiefs.
underestimate. Yeah.
Just like, well, they can't possibly do this again with, they barely outscore their opponents this year. But yeah, let people once again start to think that the Chiefs are, not the prohibitive, well, I don't say prohibitive, certainly the number one favorite to win the Super Bowl. Um, it pissed off a bunch of Bengals fans, which, okay, I
There's
think
a bonus
maybe
for us.
we overdo that a little bit. Like I want to feel like the Bengals, the way John Hamm felt towards his colleague in the elevator had just gotten fired or whatever it was on Mad Men.
Yeah.
It's like I don't think about you at all. Like I
Yeah.
I, I
Yeah.
think giving the Bengals fans any attention whatsoever on Twitter is giving them too much credit. Just ignore
Oh,
them.
it's so
Like
hard though, Rany.
They talk a lot. They talk
they
a
They
do,
lot.
talk a
but
lot.
and we win a lot. So what's the point? Like
Yeah.
let them talk.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
win,
Yeah.
and
That's
just
fair.
I feel like they talk a lot because to them they're not going to win. So
Right.
their win is to get engagement, even
Yeah.
if. And I honestly, I think some people just have a humiliation fetish. I really do. I just feel
Hmm.
like they
Yeah,
don't.
Hmm.
definitely.
They just want to be humiliated. So, but anyway, they're unhappy. So that part of it is fun. Um, but and then of course the hilarious overreaction of certain media members.
Oh my God.
The Bengals fans is one thing. Like, fine, I expected that. But when like Don Van Natta is is writing the words on Twitter that the Chiefs took a dive. This is like
Oh,
a
it's
Pulitzer
ridiculous.
Prize winning journalist. And okay, I get you're frustrated, but like taking a dive is an incredibly loaded term. That's like
Yes.
boxers take it. That is like you're alleging corruption. You're
Yeah.
alleging fraud. Like
I mean,
the
I
fix
think he
is
was
in.
alleging that.
I
I
Yeah.
think
mean,
he
it
is.
really,
Yeah.
and it's like, I mean, I'm flabbergasted because I'm like, what is it you think the Chiefs are like? You think they're purposely losing because they're afraid the Bengals might beat the Bills? Like
Right.
they're not even worried about
Exactly.
them beating themselves. It's like, does he not understand how seeding works?
Right.
Did he think the Bengals would, if they got made the playoffs, would somehow jump the line and get to play the Chiefs in the first round? Like, I don't know. It just,
Or that
it's
if they beat the Bills and came to Arrowhead, that we wouldn't be ecstatic that the only team we lost to all season long wasn't just knocked
right.
out of the playoffs,
Exactly.
and
I'm like,
now we have to play a 9-8 team in the divisional round. Like it would have been best case scenario for the Bengals to walk into Buffalo and beat them, and yet people seem to think that the Chiefs were so scared of a team they haven't lost to since the 2021 season. They've won 2 Super Bowls since the last time they lost to the Bengals.
Yeah.
It just drives me nuts. And
it's
also,
hilarious,
did the
but
Chiefs did they invent resting their starters
right.
this week?
Exactly. That's the
Like,
part that bothers me more.
how have these people never watched football before? It doesn't make any sense.
Look, I understand the sentiment that like the sport has a problem when teams have less than no motivation to play their final game
Sure.
competitively. Like, yes, it is a problem. It is a league problem. It's a sport problem. It is not a team problem.
Nope.
And if there's a way, like, I've had this discussion with friends because yeah, it's unfortunate that the sport is set up in this way. But it's the same argument when I used to, and this is a little extreme, but like when people would take the moral soapbox about baseball players using PEDs back in the 90s when there was no testing for it whatsoever.
Hmm.
And, everyone in the league knew it was going on, but they just kind of wanted to pretend it didn't happen. And, oh, do you want to know the frightening reality, or do you want to see me hit some dingers?
Yeah, right.
And
Right.
Mark McGuire went out and hit, you want to see Roger Maris's record be broken because it's the best story in sports right now. We're going to have Mark
Right.
McGuire hit 70 and Sammy Sosa hit 66. Um, and then people want to blame the players. This is like, if the problem isn't that the players necessarily are doing things they shouldn't do. The problem is they're incentivized to do it. You
Absolutely.
have a league that incentivizes it. You're not even testing for it. So if you have a
Right.
problem, blame the powers that be. And yeah, some of that may be the players' union, but believe me, the owners and the commissioner were not pushing for PED testing because they loved what it was doing for attendance
Yeah.
until it became a bad news story, and then suddenly they're they're like the detective in Casablanca, and shocked to find stuff like this going on in our establishment. And it's like,
Right.
immediately let's go to Congress and give congressional hearings about how we can't believe this is happening in our sport. No, bullshit, right? So
Right.
this is a milder version of it. But the point is, yeah, tanking exists because teams are incentivized to lose sometimes, and that is a problem that can only be solved by the league. I don't know that there is a really elegant solution for it. It doesn't just exist in football, obviously. I mean,
Right.
the
Right.
Royals,
And
when the Royals clinched their playoff spot on the final, I think Friday night of the season, Saturday was, Bobby Witt's only day off of the season was the
yep.
day after the Royals clinched a playoff spot. But there
Yep.
were 162 games, so one game where you're not trying hard doesn't mean as much. They were playing a team that wasn't trying to clinch a playoff spot. Um, this stuff happens, but to act like the Chiefs invented this strategy is just
Well, and
absurd.
you remember when the Eagles had an opportunity to lose a game and go up way high in the draft? I think they could have went up 4 or 5 spots when they lost, and they intentionally, or it seemed certainly to everyone, they intentionally lost the last game of the year to keep a high, like a top 3 draft pick. And tanking for draft position and to go up in the draft order and all that stuff is one thing. The Chiefs rested starters in a physical sport where a win would not have done anything. So like it's like kneeling the ball when you have the lead and you're running out the clock.
Yeah,
Like they're just
that's a great
kneeling the season.
analogy. You're kneeling on the season, yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
look, anybody who said this after Christian Watson blew out his ACL,
Yes. No
Right.
kidding. Zay
like,
Flowers.
what the
I
heck?
mean,
Like, it's this the Chiefs are doing what's best for them. I think if it had been a closer game, maybe it's just because it was like they were
yeah.
just so
It looks
bad,
like they didn't even show up. Yeah.
right? But
No, that's
like,
fair.
it's, if any, again, that to me makes it actually more fun and more hilarious that they did lose as big as they did, because it just created this much more moralizing and whining from people. I
Yeah.
do, there is one thing I want to say about this though, which is, you know we just saw, the Chiefs go to Denver to play their final game of the season that meant nothing to them,
Mhm.
meaning they played their backup quarterback, they played all their backups. Imagine if they had done that and still won.
Well, that
Imagine
backup quarterback must
what
have been
about
pretty
backup.
special
What
if
what
they
would you
did
say
that.
about that backup quarterback making, especially if he was like making like his NFL debut
Oh, well
Yeah.
then he'd
and he
probably
Yeah, that
have
won?
would be
something.
crazy.
He probably would have a future in the sport, I would
I
think.
mean, it honestly, by the end of the game, the first thing in my mind was, man, Patrick Mahomes is even more impressive
Yeah.
in 2017 than I think I
Yeah.
appreciated at the
Carson Wentz is
we've appreciated
cooked.
all this time. because it's exactly the same scenario. Now, the Broncos that year, there's a difference. I think they sucked, and I think
Yeah,
they also packed it in.
yeah,
But I sometimes I feel like at some point I want to read the definitive story of that game,
sure.
um, like an oral history told by like the backups who played with Patrick in that game.
Hmm.
Like I want quotes from like
Albert
Albert
Wilson.
Wilson,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
who
Of
had
course.
147 receiving yards,
Uh-huh.
um,
Game of his life.
playing, with a guy who had never, thrown a pass in his career before. And who was it, Demarcus Robinson who had to catch on the final drive? Like it's just,
Yeah.
Demetrius Harris had
Demetrius Harris catches the
73.
first completion, the fifth. Yeah.
Uh,
Unbelievable story.
I mean, it's when you think back to that. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, they like looking at what it came down to was I felt bad for Carson Wentz in this game because like he finally got opportunity to
Yeah.
play a full game to like
Sure.
showcase himself to see if he can get a job for next season or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he goes out
He
there and you
lost many
realize right
yards.
away it's like, oh man, he has no one to throw to,
No.
and he has like no one to block for him, and he's got it's like it's going to be really really hard for him to show anything when none of the good players on this team are playing with him.
Yep.
And then you realize Patrick Mahomes didn't have Travis Kelce. Tyreek Hill was resting that day. Like it's
Hmm.
crazy in retrospect what he was able to do, and it kind of was the blueprint for what we saw last year in the playoffs, which is kind of like he can make it work with any receivers.
Yeah.
He just can.
Right.
So that to me was kind of just kind of a fun flashback what we saw this past weekend to remind us that yeah, you know what, if the backup is talented enough, you can win these games, but it's just not normal to do so.
Not at all. Let's talk more about that backup quarterback from 2017, who is now, the focus of all of our lives. We wanted to do a little bit with you that Austin and I have done on the show a few times, which is to do a draft where we just alternate, go back and forth, and kind of ping off of each other with some different ideas. So we're going to draft our favorite potential playoff outcomes, assuming the three-peat gets completed. So we're taking the fact that the Chiefs win off the board, and we're just going to talk about some things that would imply and some things that the Chiefs might be able to do on that path. We're going to get a little bit, storyline specific. So we'll do it in snake order draft. You are our guest. You've got the first pick on the board. Then it'll go to Austin. Then it'll go to me. Then Austin. Then you. And we'll just kind of go back and forth like that. So let's hear it. What's the first narrative you're thinking about that you're most looking forward to discussing after the three-peat is accomplished?
Okay, so I took this assignment and I tried to go in a little bit of a different direction, in part because I'm hoping we don't step on each other's toes.
Yeah, great. Love it.
And I was looking for like accomplishments or feats that may occur along the way. So not just necessarily with the
Yep.
three-peat. Then I've got
Yep.
these in kind of a chronological order. So my first pick will be the first thing that the Chiefs can accomplish, which
Okay.
is if the Chiefs win on, I guess it's gonna we're assuming it's gonna be Saturday, right? Next Saturday.
Most likely.
If they win their first playoff game, they will become the first team in the history of the National Football League to win 8 consecutive playoff games without missing the playoffs in between.
Right. That
Right.
Brady streak of 10.
The
included
Patriots
one
have a 10 gamer,
Mhm.
but that was between 2000, that they did not make the playoffs in 2002. They won the Super
Yep.
Bowl in 2001. And I think that it's only fair that if a team does not make the playoffs at all, that counts as a loss.
Yeah, yes.
Definitely
That
should.
breaks the streak.
Yep.
So they did not. The Green Bay Packers won the NFL championship in 1961 and 62.
Mhm.
And then again in 65, 66, 67, but they did not qualify for the playoffs in 63 or 64. Because they won 9 consecutive games. So right now, the Chiefs, though, are one of 7 teams that have won 7 consecutive playoff games with no interruption.
Yep.
The Packers from 65 to 67. So the first NFL, their last NFL championship, and then the first two Super Bowls. They won seven in a row. The 74 to 76 Steelers. I believe they won the Super Bowl in 74 and 75, and then won their first playoff game in 76. The 49ers, same thing, 88 and 89, they won the Super Bowl, and then their first game in 1990. But then they're the team that's probably come the closest to
Yeah, because they
three-peat,
made it to
right?
the championship game.
Right, because they had gotten a bye, they won their first, but then their chance to win an eighth consecutive game, they lost, I believe, to the Cowboys, I want to say.
Giants, I thought.
Giants. That's right. It
I
was the
think the
Giants,
Giants
yes.
dethroned
The Bill
yeah.
Belichick giant defensive
hmm
coordinator Giants, correct. You're right.
hmm
Then the Cowboys from 92 to 94 won seven in a row. And then the only team the only team that had won seven playoff games in a 2-year span before the Chiefs, the 97-98 Broncos. Right. So
Boo.
in a way, I mean, the Chiefs have already knocked them from their unique perch in football history by winning, because both of those teams needed to win 4 games in one of their two back-to-back championships. But the Chiefs have also accomplished 7 playoff wins in 2 years, and they did not make it back to the playoffs in '99 because John Elway retired before he was exposed as a fraud, as we all know. And then finally, the
Famously.
2003, 2005 Patriots. So the Patriots won again in 03, 04, and then they won their first playoff game in 05. So the
Yep.
point is, 7 different teams have won 7 in a row. No team has ever won 8. So
I
if
love it.
they win their first game, they will, this is something I definitely think we will need to promote, because yes, I think claiming that the record is 10 when you didn't make the playoffs in between at some point is a bit of a cop out. So
Yeah, it's fraudulent. It's
and
fraudulent.
for this, you told me this would happen to our Kansas City Chiefs, who very
Uh-huh.
famously, I believe, currently hold the longest losing streak in playoffs
Oh,
history. Correct? I think that
I
9 in
think
a
that's
row.
right. Yeah.
I think they broke the Lions record, if I recall it. It's
The Bengals had a long streak in there too, and
yeah.
Marv Lewis was
Yeah.
7-0-7, but
Yeah.
I do think Randy's right that we have
I
the
take it
NFL
as
record for.
a distinct blessing of the last few years that I don't actually know for sure if they still hold the
Good point.
record or they do, because like that was our
Sure.
identity.
Yeah, who knows?
70, I mean, the before Patrick Mahomes took the field, that was our identity, and now it's the exact opposite. But yeah, let's see, 94, 95, 97, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then
It's pretty
they,
tough. It's a tough way
yeah,
to live.
yeah, I believe they did. It was finally the Alex Smith beating, oh
Texans.
gosh, who was it? Brock Osweiler
Yeah,
was
the
their
Texans,
quarterback
yeah,
that day.
30
Yeah,
nothing.
yeah, that was the
Oh, so we lost 8 in a row then.
8. Yeah,
And
it was 8 in a row.
and Detroit's record is 9. So we almost
Oh,
got
so
there.
we didn't get there. Okay, well, we lost
We
8.
Merely the
almost
AFC
got it.
record.
Yes,
Okay,
we have we're tied with the Bengals for the longest
okay,
AFC
so 8 in a
playoff
row,
losing
and
streak.
now 1 win away from 8 wins in a row. So
That's pretty
that
good.
feels pretty
That's
good.
that does feel pretty good.
Okay, so that's
I
my
don't
first
have
pick.
this. I love it. I don't have this on my thing, and I know Austin, you're up next, but I just want to say that only one team has ever won 15 out of 18 playoff games ever, and of course, that's the first 18 games of Patrick Mahomes' career. No one else has ever had 18 where they got 15 of them. So I just love them, man. All right, Austin, what's your narrative?
It's pretty good. I'm also, it's so hard to rank these, so I'm also going to kind of go in chronological order, and
Okay.
I'm also going to pick up on something that Randy was putting down with the John Elway stuff, the Broncos
Mm.
stuff. For me, beating an AFC West team, or I mean, this is extremely unlikely, but two AFC West teams, we have an opportunity to do something here that Patrick Mahomes has never done. Now, there are only 5 teams in the AFC that Patrick Mahomes has never beaten in the playoffs. And of course, those are just teams that he has never played in the playoffs, except for the Patriots, who
Patriots,
got
yeah.
him and have not gotten back. You've got the Patriots and obviously one of those other
Jets.
AFC, Jets. And then you've got the two AFC West teams are both in the playoffs somehow. Of course, the Chiefs. Everybody remembers January 4th, 1998. Tony Gonzalez called out of bounds. The 13-3 Chiefs robbed of what should have been, let's just say it should have been a 17-14 win.
Mhm.
Broncos go on to win their first Super Bowl. They win it again the following year. Those teams have never met in playoffs since, so the Broncos are 1-0 against the Chiefs in the playoffs. I would say fewer of us, myself included, remember the fact that the Chiefs also played the Chargers in the playoffs in
1993, 17 to nothing.
1993. 17-0.
Mhm.
Stan Humphries outdueling Dave Krieg, and the Chiefs trading for Joe Montana 4 months later. So those teams have never met in the playoffs since then, which means both the Chargers and the Broncos are 1-0 against our Chiefs in the playoffs. And this is our first opportunity. I would even say perhaps our first likely opportunity to avenge one or both of these playoff losses. And I will say, since we're assuming that the Chiefs are going to win these games,
Mhm.
give them to me. Give them to me. I would rather beat these two teams than any other two teams in the AFC. And
Sure.
I the idea of beating Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, that's very thrilling to me. That may appear later on in my draft picks or other people's draft picks, but listen, the Chiefs own the all-time head-to-heads against both of these franchises. We all know that the Chiefs started off when Patrick Mahomes became the starter, last place in the AFC West in terms of division titles, and now after 6 consecutive division titles with Patrick Mahomes as the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, and a couple with Alex Smith thrown in there as well, they now own the most AFC West division titles. They own the head-to-head records against both of these franchises in the regular season, and they significantly widened that gap. First of all, they had the head-to-head before Patrick Mahomes, and now it's not even close. So this is it. This is it. Of course, we have more rings than both of
Of
these
course.
teams combined because the Chargers have none.
Mhm.
There's just one black mark left, and we can avenge it now. Finally, that these two crappy teams have found a way to crawl their way into the playoffs and give us a chance to even the score. And again, obviously, the point of this exercise is that we're assuming that the Chiefs are going to win these games.
Well,
I
because they are.
I have been quite apprehensive, of course, about the possibility of the Chiefs losing to the Broncos in the playoffs, which I think we can all agree is the worst thing that could ever possibly happen. I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say that it would be probably the worst thing to ever happen in the history of the franchise to have the Broncos as a 7 seed come at Arrowhead and defeat us after back-to-back Super Bowl championships and prevent us from getting to the Super Bowl for a chance at a three-peat. I don't know. That
It's
would be
that and
hard.
Javon Belcher, 1 and 2.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it would be very, very hard to do. But I'm into the idea of us just, kind of beating the Broncos and or the Chargers on the way to the three-peat. I think that would be kind of fun. Now, it obviously means much less to us to win than it would mean for them to win. They'll blow it off, rookie quarterback,
Mhm.
first year with John Harbaugh, or Jim
Jim.
Harbaugh, whatever. They blow it off, but it would mean something to me. I think it would mean something to certainly Chiefs fans that remember these two playoff losses. Those were both Marty Schottenheimer teams. Those were both, I mean, the Chargers loss was sort of at the beginning of Marty Schottenheimer's run as a sort of a dominant force for the Chiefs, but this was a Chiefs team that even in the 90s, which before the current era was probably the heyday of Chiefs football and Len Dawson, uh, couldn't beat either of these teams in the playoffs. And so give me the opportunity for revenge against the AFC West. It's time to even the score. Let's do it.
That was like a campaign speech. That was great. Great. Loved it. I would also say that, Lamar and Josh just need to lose a playoff game. I don't really care if it's to the Chiefs. And in fact, if the Chiefs do it, everyone's like, well, yeah, they just got to wait for the Chiefs to not be there, and then they'll go ahead and win theirs. If they lose to the Broncos and the Steelers or the Chargers or whoever, now it's about them not being able to win those games no matter who they play. And to me, I'm way into that. That just completely tanks their whole aura. So love that idea. That would be great.
No,
Um,
I just want to. I do want to throw a
yes,
caveat. Like my concern
yes.
here, yes, beating either of those teams. Um, to me, I think I've said this before. Like I still, I hate the Broncos with the intensity of 1,000 suns.
Yeah.
The Raiders are, still just the personification of evil to me. But the Chargers, I whatever. I don't know. I just have never. We
Yeah.
maybe, I mean, yeah, we did lose to them, but like it was 17-0. It was, a
Yeah, sure. Dave
bad,
Krieg
it
was the
was a bad
quarterback.
Chiefs. Exactly. Like I was expecting us to go anywhere with Dave Craig as our quarterback. I remember that game, and yeah, I didn't come away from that game thinking that like the Chargers robbed us, right?
Right.
The Broncos, that game, yes, may still be the
They
most
cheated.
painful. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That we I think people forget when we talk about our hatred of the Broncos. I don't think the average, not just fan, the average like NFL pundit just doesn't understand how much of the frustration is from the fact that on multiple in multiple ways there were, whether it
Oh
was
my God.
with the cut block rules,
Salary.
whether there was allegations
Mhm.
of like using lubricant on their jersey to make them
Yeah.
more slippery. Like there was all sorts of shenanigans
Yeah,
going
they
on.
cheated the salary cap. I mean, they
Yeah.
And
literally
there was a
got
salary cap one. They got, I
they
think, believe they
literally
actually
got
lost a pick,
penalized by the
right?
league. Yes, they
Yeah,
did.
they lost a draft pick for
And
that. For
that
like,
was right in the middle of their back-to-back Super Bowl runs.
yeah,
So I mean, it was
yeah.
entirely fraudulent for
So
sure.
that
Look.
to me is, play, if we do play them in the playoffs and we go up 38-0, which I hope we will, Andy Reid better not take. I know Andy is
No.
a gentleman and believes in sportsmanship and does not run up the score, but like it better be like Hans Gruber in Die Hard, where you fire the missile and it's like hit it again. It's like they're
Yeah.
already dead. Hit them again. I don't care.
Yep.
Just keep beating the crap out of them. The caveat though is like you said, I don't want to really play them because the
Yeah.
idea of losing
Yeah.
even just the potential
I
possible
know.
that I will
I know it.
be that meme that meme will be applying to me 3 hours before game time. Like I will be
I know it.
terrified something goes wrong. Pat gets hit and has a concussion, and Carson Wentz
Hmm.
suddenly is the
Sure.
only defense between us and, like you said, the most humiliating loss in franchise history.
Mm. Yeah.
So that's the part that I worry about. But I will say, like, at some point in his career, I'm hoping we can cross off like all of AFC bingo on
Yeah.
Patrick's
Getting pretty
Oh,
playoff
close.
card.
yeah.
I
Right.
made this point last year. I cheated by saying that the Chargers, Raiders, and Broncos, by virtue of having finished behind the Chiefs every single year of his career, I feel like the Chiefs have already eliminated all three of those teams
Yeah.
multiple
Yes.
times.
Yeah.
So the only
Yes.
teams that have not had their season end as a result of the Chiefs in the AFC are the Jets and Patriots.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and
And they've
the
had their own
only
struggles.
right, I was going to say the only concern with ever getting a chance to finish them off is simply the fact that, well, the Patriots, with Drake May, but we'll probably get another opportunity. The Jets may
Agreed.
never be good enough to get the opportunity to be eliminated by the Chiefs in the playoffs.
They might just
Um,
defunct that organization. Just
Yeah.
crater it,
Relegation.
expand with
right,
another team. like they're pathetic.
right. So so look, I hope we beat the Broncos and Chargers. I do not hope we play them, but if we do beat them and we can cross them off the bingo card, that would be fun. I would be up for that.
Love it. Okay, so I will start off just real quick talking about Travis Kelce. He is, of course, we all know the all-time postseason leader in receptions, but he is 342 yards and 3 touchdowns behind Jerry Rice for the postseason triple crown for having the
Mm.
most catches, the most yards, and the most receiving touchdowns in postseason history. Clearly, with 3 games and he needs 342 yards, he'd need to average 110 yards a game. Doable, especially what we've seen out of Kelce in the playoffs, and the 3 touchdowns I feel like could happen I mean, if it was the Texans, it happened in a quarter, but yeah, it's certainly one that I know everyone's talked about him a lot, and just is he washed, and is he distracted, and is he saving it for the playoffs and all that stuff, and of course it would be storybook for him to set these records, win a third championship, and I mean I think we would all pretty much expect, or at least not be shocked at all, by that being the last game of his career. And if that is the case, and if he does want to walk away from here after a championship, I don't think there should be any bad feelings or any, everyone will completely celebrate the GOAT. I think we all need to realize how close we might be to watching him for the last time. So that's my first narrative.
Do you
Hmm.
think? Do you think, like, because before the season he basically renegotiated like a 2-year deal? Do you think that he would not necessarily, like he is thinking about retiring this year and not coming back one more season, especially if they win and they have a chance to like
I,
defend again?
For Pete.
I just feel like athletes always want to go out on top. They always, 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 when they win championships, are more incentivized to walk away than if they had lost one, especially if they're competitive. I don't know. He's got so much going on for him. It's such a slog to go through these 18-week seasons and all the stuff that you can tell it's taken it from him physically and mentally. I mean, he's not the same guy. And I guess I wouldn't be shocked at all if up on the podium after the three-peat, he immediately says, "I'm coming back, and we're going for four." Which Austin and I have said that we are going to call the reverse Buffalo if they're going for the
Reverse
four in a
Buffalo.
row. We're going to use that for literally an entire year until it's no longer relevant. But
Poor Bills fans, like they were just
Yeah,
standing there.
that is tough. But
They're
a
catching
reverse
strays
Buffalo.
constantly.
That's going to be an all timer if that happens.
I
So
will say, Taylor, to your point,
yes,
I mean, if you look at his last three playoff games, I mean, this is just last year. You could throw Miami in there because it was a pretty similar output, but I mean, Buffalo, Baltimore, and then the Super Bowl against San Francisco last year. I mean, he had 284 yards, he had
right,
25 catches, and he had three touchdowns. That's
right.
not that far off
No,
of what we're talking about him needing to set the Triple Crown in this playoff run.
mm-hmm.
And, the Chiefs have more help around him this year, and he's another year older and another year more washed than he was last year. But, I mean, we all thought last year that Travis Kelce was
Sure.
we thought it may be the end of the road for him last year, and then he certainly turned in some vintage performances in the playoffs last year. I mean, we're not talking about a huge gap between what his output was last year and what he would need to set that record, all of those records in this playoff run.
I agree
So
for sure.
I'm looking at this. Yeah, so 342 yards and three TDs to tie Jerry. I was actually wondering if it's three to pass
Oh
him.
no, yeah, three to
So
tie.
four to take. Well, and the reason I'm thinking is, let's say he gets 210 yards and two TDs and they win. Does he come back in part to go for
Mm,
that record? Like
I
I
like
wonder
it.
how much. I
Sure.
wonder. And
Yeah.
nobody's really talking the Triple Crown. Like I don't even know how much of this is a thing. So we almost have to play up what the import of setting the all-time playoff record in all three categories
Sure,
to incentivize him in a way, because I'm
sure.
not
I
sure
love
people
it.
are
Make
talking
it a
about
bigger
it
deal.
enough. Make it a bigger deal, because especially because that prior to him taking the reception record last year, that Jerry Rice held all three of those, right? The Triple Crown was held
Yep,
by the
yep.
iconic, pass
Yeah.
catcher
Greatest
of all
receiver ever.
time.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I think it's really like, could he do it in one postseason? Possibly. I mean, he had 355 yards, three TDs last year. Oh, again, it was four games. But you go
Mhm.
back to 2020, 360 yards and three TDs in three games. And
Yeah.
Sure.
he has scored at least three touchdowns in five consecutive postseasons,
That's
which
crazy.
that's pretty
That's
shocking.
awesome.
I mean, he
It
only
is
Yeah,
had
it
two
crazy.
is.
prior to the Super Bowl run starting.
Uh-huh.
He only had two. I mean, in four playoff games with Alex Smith, he had caught one touchdown, and then in Patrick's first postseason, he had one, and then he's had 17 in the five since. I mean, but also like you said with like the Texans game 3 1/4, like the mind meld between Patrick and Travis just goes to another level in the postseason, and
Yep.
so even though I mean, let's not forget, he only scored three touchdowns all season this year in 16
Yep.
games. But
Yep.
you have to think. But one of the reasons why the vibes feel good right now is just I just feel like they're just holding back so much, and that was part of what
Yeah.
made this
Yeah.
this last game hilarious too. Was it wasn't just, oh gosh, nobody's playing, like they pulled the offensive line, and it was like they're running the most basic plays.
Made people so
I mean,
mad.
high school would have been embarrassed to play this kind of like, this level of and then and on defense. I mean, did they have to give Spagnuolo like a tranquilizer or something to just keep him? You have to think it was just so painful for him to just be like, all right, cover two,
Yeah, they had like a
just
Make-A-Wish kid calling the
another cover two.
plays. I mean,
I think a Make-A-Wish kid would have done better. Like, especially when he
fair.
played Madden, it's just
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah. That's fair.
let's
Send the
blitz here.
house.
No, no
Make a
blitzing.
Wish
Nothing.
Kid definitely would have thrown in some Engage 8 in there,
At least some,
some
yeah, at
fire
least a
blitz,
blitz here and
Yeah.
there. It's like,
Yeah.
can
Little
we send
jailbreak.
McDuffie at the quarterback one time? No, he's not even playing. Okay, never mind. So you just wonder how many tricks do they have up their sleeves for the playoffs. So, he might get close. So I do think this is something we should all endeavor to push this narrative of Travis Kelsey and the postseason triple crown. Because I actually think it's a
I love
really
it.
really interesting little side narrative for the playoffs.
So my back half, starting with pick number four, I'm going to say the Chiefs are back, and by that I mean the version of the Chiefs that we kind of expected going into the year: high flying offense, healthy receivers, defense that gets after it. Between Amena, who's caused a huge problem for offenses since he's come back, he's been really really good. If Jalen Watson is going to come back and do his thing, I just think that having all the pieces, having all the horses in the barn ready to go for the playoffs, plus, as you were just alluding to, maybe opening up the playbook, some or all compared to what we've seen in the regular season, I would love to see, and I know this is not going to happen, but we're wish casting here. I would love for the Chiefs to win each of these games by 10 plus and just finally kick this narrative that they have to scrape by. I mean, all these Chiefs playoff games that we've watched for the most part, other than Miami, have been really close lately. And it would just be nice to. Was it Austin? Was it Ben Solak? I think who noted that the Chiefs might regress to the mean, but by that start to win by more than what they've been winning
I think
by.
it
I
was
think
I think it was Aaron Schatz, but
Aaron
yes,
Schatz. Yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah. You're right.
yes,
You're right. But the
because they're very
idea
good.
because they're very good. And the fact that a very good team would keep scraping by one possession does feel like if you were to play it out 1,000 times, that it would seem more likely that that team starts to blow people out. And when would be a better time than with the three-peat on the line for them to just push the chips all in and play their best football and go out and kick three teams' asses on the way to the Super Bowl and not just beat them, but show them who runs the league. And I mean, that would be as delicious as stealing it from the clutches of defeat, which is also, for the record, extremely fun and cool. And I love stuff like 13 seconds where the other team thinks they've got them and then they pull it out. But boy, it would do a lot. It would do a great number for my stress levels and Rany, you talked about the medication that would need to be adjusted if they win games like this in the playoffs. I mean, I'm going to be jumping off the roof, or in a good way. I'm going to be jumping up and down if they blow these teams out because that would be very welcome change from what we've seen lately.
I'm really glad you brought this up because I went in a different direction, obviously with my draft picks. But yes, this is something I've been thinking about and been tempted to write about. Would be how awesome would it be if after the narrative of the Chiefs all year was that they, were maybe lucky to win, or at least like that they were barely able to hold on and win at the end, that they go into the playoffs and then they just destroy
Yeah,
teams.
right.
And here's the thing. They definitely you if they do, you can't say they didn't warn you because
Mm-hmm.
after winning two games in their first 14 games or their first 13 wins or 12, oh sorry, week 14. So their first 13 games, they won 12 of them. Two of them were by more than 7 points.
Yep.
So two of their first 12 wins by more than seven. Then they won three in a row by more than seven, by 14, by eight to the Texans. But that one, I think they were up. I mean, it was not even as close as an 8 point win, right? I think I guess they took an 8 point lead towards the end, but I mean that felt like a comfortable win all pretty much
It
throughout.
did.
And then 19 points, um, which I believe was their biggest win of the season, right?
Big time. I mean, by
Yeah,
by a mile.
to
I
the
think
Steelers.
previously it
Yeah,
was
so the
the San
13 point
Francisco
win,
win by 10. Or yeah,
the
the Saints by
Saints. Yeah,
13.
the
You're
Saints
right.
by 13. So three in a row. And but then of course then they got blown out by 38 with nobody playing and kind of again, they're hiding in plain sight.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why, I feel good going to the playoffs. It's like the team with the starters out there that we saw the last month of the season was a team that was kind of blowing everybody out. And it's coincided with the return of Hollywood Brown
Yep.
and Charles Omenihu. Right.
Yep.
It wasn't a fluke. There was a reason for it. The team was better on the field. And now they're going to have at least 23 days to rest
Mm-hmm.
up and potentially Jalen Watson coming back. Like there is absolutely a scenario where they go out there and just certainly in their first, like I could see them playing whoever, the rematch with the Steelers or Texans or even like the Chargers and just like, scoring 31 points for the first time all season for one thing. But like, imagine they go out
Yeah.
there and just like score 35, go win like 35 to 10.
Yep.
just you know the rest of the league is going to be like,
Oh,
oh
here they go.
shit,
Yep.
right? So, but for them to do that, go through the post, like, because you say, it's also fun to, like, rip people's hearts out and win, come back. Yes, but only after the fact.
And they've done
And
that.
exactly, I was going to say, and you know what? They've done that already. Like, we've
Yeah.
already had the postseason where they were trailing by 10 points or more in every single game and still won by 10 or more points, right?
hmm
We've already had, like, three Super Bowl wins in which they were trailing by double digits in every single game. How fun would it be to win a Super Bowl where they just, like, lead wire to
Yes.
wire? Like,
Yes.
let's just try something different this time. We what a absurd luxury we have to, like, try to win with different styles each year. But that would be a lot of fun if that happened.
I feel like people do overlook. I mean, like the evidence is right there. You talked about it, Rany. I mean, like the last game of the season, not only did they sit everyone, and I mean, in places they were down to like their third stringers when they could be, but they just didn't. They didn't run anything. They didn't do anything. And like people forget that the Chiefs do that to some degree, like the entire regular season. And this was an extreme example of it. The last game against the Broncos, obviously, but like they kind of do it all year. And in the playoffs, they typically are playing their best ball. They played their best ball in the playoffs last year. That team wasn't even that good. They just
Yeah.
happened to be playing their best ball at the end. This team is much better than last year. And if
Yeah.
they take the leap that they did last year going into this playoffs, I think we could see a lot of really fun stuff. So it's back to me.
Oh, hold on, Austin. One thing I want to say real quick. I do you kind of think that they might have done that a little bit against the Bills?
Yeah,
Like, I
yes,
Oh,
feel
that's an
like
definitely.
interesting thought.
Yeah,
I
100%
feel
for sure.
like that's how good this team is, and that is sort of how
I
their
think.
their success feeds on itself to the point where
It's
at
40
all
chess.
times they are thinking about the playoffs. At
Yep,
Yep.
all times,
yep,
every decision they make is with what do we do to maximize our chances of winning a championship? And if that
Yep.
means holding back against the second best team in the conference in a road game when you are 9-0 and you have a chance to basically salt away the number one seed with like 3 games to go. I feel like watching that game, they Spagnolo did not engage fully.
Yeah.
And
yep.
Yeah.
here's the other thing. Like, if they had won that game, guys, do we think that they would have benched everybody if they had been 16-0
No.
against the
I mean,
Broncos?
they
I
would
don't
have had the
I
one seed locked up in week
I
14.
right.
actually,
They would
yeah,
have had
I
4 weeks to
do
bench
think that
people.
they would have. I mean, I think we would have seen like multiple versions of the Broncos game, even if they had been undefeated, which like there is precedent for that because the Colts,
Right.
we
The
talked
Colts did
about
it
this
when they were
before,
14-0, right?
and a couple of
Mhm.
times. I mean, they did it more than once where they were undefeated late in the season and then sort of
But
started.
imagine the controversy of
Yes.
that,
It
and
would have been bad for the team,
right,
I
which
think.
is which leads to my point, which is that don't you think Andy Reid was actually happier
Yeah.
Yes.
that they were
Yeah.
14-1, 15-1 rather than 16-0?
I
And
agree.
I think he's
Yes.
also happy that they were 15-2 and got their asses kicked in their last game.
Yes. Talk about some motivation.
Even though none of the starters were playing, I guarantee you, I
You don't
mean the
think Jaden Hicks
starters,
is pissed off?
yeah, and the starters that didn't play are also pissed. I
Right.
mean,
Yes.
they're mad about it.
Right.
Um,
But
yeah,
Like you
I
said,
think it's
Jaden Hicks played. Oh, we haven't mentioned the other reason I'm a little bit more optimistic. We're talking about health. It's DJ Humphries. Like,
Yeah.
sure,
I,
Yeah.
sure.
I'm not certain he's going to play, but after what we saw in that game, I think we saw enough that I do think he's going to start at left tackle. And Joe is as much because just Joe Tooney is just so good at left guard. Like, I
Sure.
don't think the decline, if you have Tooney playing left tackle, I don't think it's any worse than Humphries is there. But what you lose at left guard with the drop off from Tooney to Caliendo is just so big. So
At
that's
least
another
they've
thing.
got a good plan if Humphrey struggles. They know exactly what to do. They're
Right,
not going to
exactly,
hesitate.
exactly.
So,
So
I
I feel
mean,
like you take that, you have that as your backup, and that allows you to start Humphries, which again, they were 15-1 with essentially what 45 minutes of DJ Humphries at left tackle, and suddenly they're
yep.
going to have him at left tackle.
Yep.
So that's another reason. But yeah, I honestly feel like I don't think they want to necessarily lose to the Bills because it would have just been a lot easier to lose to somebody else and not lose the tiebreaker to the Bills. But like they are so confident in their ability to make the playoffs, and certainly after last year where they can win from any playoff seed,
Right.
that all they cared about was not showing the Bills enough too much, knowing that they're likely to play them again. So it's just hilarious. And so I hope that they come out and they have some really special plays designed and they just go just ape shit on the playoff teams
You
and
guys remember how
storm
early
them.
they started thinking about the playoffs last year? Literally on the podium.
Yeah,
So,
right.
like,
Yeah.
this team, that's all they care about. That's all they're focused on. They do not care about the regular season. And I mean, it's obvious.
Won
So,
15 games.
Austin,
Yes,
why don't you,
it's obvious they don't care
yeah,
about the playoffs. They only won 15
they would have
games.
won all 17 if they really cared, if they really wanted to, but they didn't. So, take it away, Austin.
I'll do a simple one. Patrick Mahomes. Let me just preface this with so the all-time playoff wins list for
Oh
quarterbacks.
God, you're not going to do this to me.
Hold
You're going
on,
to steal my pick.
hold on. All right,
He
that's
might go a
fine. I'm
different
sorry,
direction.
Randy. This is what happens when you draft. It looks fake. Okay, it looks fake.
Oh,
You
yeah.
have Tom Brady in first place with 35, and then in second place you have Joe Montana with 16. And then
Mhm.
in third place, in sole possession of third place, you have Patrick Mahomes with 15, which means, of course, if he wins one playoff game, he ties Joe Montana for second place of all time. If he wins two playoff games, which he would if we're getting a three-peat, he passes Joe Montana. He's in sole possession of second place. And I, I mean, again, like this is what I mean when I say it looks fake. We're talking about the second most playoff wins by a quarterback ever. Do you know how long it took Tom Brady to tie Joe Montana? He did it in his 12th season. Okay.
Sure.
Patrick Mahomes would do it in his seventh season. And we're talking about passing Joe Montana, who did it in his entire career, winning 4 Super Bowls. So this is, and I apologize, Randy, for
Screw
sniping,
you, Austin.
for sniping,
This was my
your.
first
He
absolute
was
first
fired
pick.
up.
When you told me about a drive, I'm like this was LaFleur, but I'm like I'm going to do this in
Well,
chronological order.
you
And
should have
that's our
probably.
second win.
That just sounds like bad drafting to me. In any case, I give you
You
the
can
floor, Randy.
supplement the. Yeah, there you go.
You can say what you were going to say, but I just I have to say that this is I like I it's hard to fathom that that is a true thing that could and probably will happen. I mean, even if they don't three-peat, he only has to win one to tie. And if he goes back to the Super Bowl, not only would he pass Joe Montana, he would also pass Joe Montana's, you know, attempt at the three-peat because Joe Montana perished in the or in the NFC Championship game, after back-to-back titles. So he doesn't even have to win to set the record.
Guys, he's not even 30.
What? That's
And
impossible.
if he goes to the Super Bowl, like I said, like the first game, like I said, the Chiefs will set one record. If they make it to the Super Bowl, he will have won more playoff games than every quarterback in the history of football except for Tom Brady. And he's 29 years old and he plays for our Chiefs.
Good point.
This is the LeBron James coming out of the swimming pool with the "This
Mm-hmm.
is my life" caption
Mm-hmm.
at the bottom meme come to life. Like this is our life after the Chiefs had won, I believe, 4 playoff games in my lifetime before Patrick Mahomes took the field. He's at 15. We're talking about, mind you, the mere fact that we're talking about 2 playoff wins in the same postseason as if it's nothing
Yeah,
is a sign of how
it's bare minimum.
spoiled we are because I saw 4 in my life and and now I'm just like assuming, oh, when we win our second game. But
Yeah.
holy shit,
Yeah.
17
Yeah.
wins. Joe Montana, Joe
Yeah.
Cool, who before Tom Brady, certainly before Brady and Manning, I would have said, yeah, this is probably the best quarterback who ever played, had 16 in his career. And like Tom Brady's is absolutely in range, right? Not just I think we focus so much on the actual Super Bowl titles, the rings, that we, forget that, that this in its own way is almost a more meaningful record because it requires year after year success, not just like you can't just win like 6 titles and do nothing else, right? So
Yeah.
35 wins just seems absurd. A guy
Yeah,
who,
it is
won
absurd.
what, 10 games after turning 40. He won 10 playoff games. That would rank like 10th all time or something, just Tom
Yeah.
Brady
Hmm.
after 40.
Hmm.
But if he gets to 17 or 18, if he wins all three, if he wins three, he's more than halfway to Tom Brady's all-time record, and he's not 30 yet. So yeah, that would be crazy.
Yeah, that would be crazy.
Okay, hit us with your back-to-backs. What do you got for the next two narratives since
Well,
Austin
since you
stole one
took
for you?
that one from me, you bastard. All right. So I'm gonna go, instead of doing Patrick Mahomes, I'm gonna do I'll do, if they win the Super Bowl, I'll do Andy Reid, which
Okay.
is that Andy Reid will have won his fourth title. That will tie Chuck Noll for the second most Super Bowls of all time. Super Bowl wins, right?
Pretty
Now,
good.
George Halas and Vince Lombardi have both have 5 championships, but Halas coached before there was such a thing as a Super Bowl. Lombardi only won two. And like, winning a championship in a, 12-team league
Yeah.
is no more impressive than just winning like an AFC championship. And at this point, Andy Reid has, if he makes it to the Super Bowl, will have what, like eight,
12. 12
12
AFC
AFC
championship
champ
or
or
12
NFC.
championship game.
Well,
Oh, that's
championship
appearances.
games. That's
Sorry.
appearances, right? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because he had
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This will be his sixth. Okay, so only six actually. I would have thought he would have more, but still, he would have more league conference championships than either of those guys. So the point is, Andy Reid with a Super Bowl win will be behind only Bill Belichick
Hmm.
in Super Bowl wins. He already has 273 regular season wins. He is, I believe, 29 wins behind Bill Belichick, the regular season wins. 2 years ago, he was 52 wins behind. And Bill
God,
Belichick,
that's crazy.
as you probably heard, is probably not going to win any NFL regular season games next year, and we do not count college football in this
Nope.
category. So, I mean, he could pass Bill Belichick in 2 years, probably not, but like early in the third year, when he'll only be 69 years old, he could pass Bill Belichick. Don Shula is absolutely in range for the all-time regular season wins category. Let's see, Shula was 328, so he is 55 wins away from the all-time record.
Yep.
That's 4 seasons if the Chiefs play at this level, 5 tops. Like, at this point, I have to assume Andy Reid is going to stick around long enough to become the all-time winningest coach in NFL
Mm.
history. But from a pure playoff perspective, he has 26 playoff wins already. Bill Belichick had 31. So if
Oh,
Yeah.
the Chiefs win the
whoa.
Super Bowl, he'll be 29, 2 wins behind Bill Belichick for
Two.
playoff wins.
That's
And
crazy.
third place is
That's
Landry with 20. So he's
20.
already so clear from third
Right.
place. It's Belichick and
Yeah.
Reed. They're
I,
1-2
I,
in
I
everything.
Well, in retrospect, one of the articles I feel like I'm proudest of that I wrote, it was 2 years ago, was about Andy
Yes.
Reid and about his like sort of
Yes.
potential to rank among the all-time great coaches, and that he,
Love that one.
at the time, I was like, there is a scenario in which like nobody thinks he'll catch Belichick, and I just simply said, he could.
Hmm.
Now it's like, he will, because
Yeah.
I feel like, health permitting, he will. Bill Belichick at that point, look at the Patriots kind of falling down, but like I did not expect Bill Belichick to win 4 more games in his entire coaching career, get
Yeah.
fired, not get another job. Like, that worked out from our perspective, maybe not from his, even better than I expected. But Andy Reid just keeps winning, but the playoff wins record that's absurd. Like, I would not have thought that he was that close to Bill Belichick. But if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl this year, and if they win it next year, he'll actually surpass Bill Belichick. So to me, seeing Andy Reid win a fourth title and 29 playoff wins, I think we may start to see a talk of, after the Super Bowl, the person who's um, the narrative about him might shift the most, more than Patrick Mahomes, more than
That's a good
even
point.
Kelsey. It might be Reid, because at that point, I think you will start to see serious conversation. Is Andy Reid the greatest coach of all time? He did it with 2 franchises, not one.
Hmm.
He did it with, you know, multiple quarterbacks pre-Mahomes, whereas
Mhm.
Bill Belichick, without Tom Brady, before and after, was a 500 coach. He flat out was, right? So you could make a strong argument that the body of work of Andy Reid will be even better than Bill Belichick. So that,
Yeah,
to me, that would
impact
be
on the
great.
game, coaching tree. I mean, he's done it all. It hasn't just been winning. He's made, a huge impact on everybody. And I mean, I think that was one of your great points in the Andy article, was just that he's more than just this. I mean, it's yeah, I
I mean, he
love
was
that.
a great coach before we got him, and then he
Yes.
became a greater coach. So
Don't you think too, like we've been sort of discussing, don't you think too that there's something to be said for, and this is maybe a subtler point, but to sort of return to the theme here, Bill Belichick wasn't doing what Andy Reid was doing in the regular season, right? Like the Patriots had a ton of playoff success, obviously, but the 2007 Patriots weren't holding back for the Super
At
Bowl.
all.
Maybe they should have been
yeah, well,
because they
I,
lost.
I do wonder how much of like what Reed does and how football behaves now is because of what happened to the '07 Patriots, right? Where
That's a good
they went
point.
all out, and also like this is why I said he almost preferred to have lost to the Bills because they were under look the Patriots. It's ironic because they were 15-0, but because they hadn't lost, they had to take that 16th game and try to win it, right? And they took it very
Against the
seriously.
Giants,
And
right?
who did they play?
Yeah,
The
that's
New
right. I
York
forgot about
Giants,
that.
right?
And it
Good
was
They
a
point.
3 point game. I think it was 34-31,
right.
if memory serves. Yeah.
If the Patriots had done what the Chiefs just did and just benched everybody, because in that game, Tom Brady, you know, took every snap, threw for 356 yards, two touchdowns. Lawrence Maroney, rushed 19 times. Wes Welker and Randy Moss both got over 100 yards. Like
Sure.
they went
They
all
went all
out.
out.
Well, guess
Mhm.
what? On the other sideline, a man named Steve Spagnuolo was taking notes.
Biden is time for. He knew they were going to play in the Super Bowl. Obviously, the
Right.
Giants.
Well, he knew that if we're
Yeah.
going back, yeah, we're gonna have to. If
Yeah.
we want to win the Super Bowl, we're gonna have to beat this team at some
Uh-huh.
point.
Uh-huh.
And I
Love
mean, I
it.
really haven't thought about it, but my God, because I remember watching that game, and it was just a football fan, it was compelling. The Patriots are going for, the undefeated record, and
Yeah.
it was a great game. I think they were down at one point. Yeah, they were down in the third quarter, 28-23. The final score obviously, was they won by three, but it was a very close game. And yet, in retrospect, yeah, that was the absolute worst thing that the Patriots could have done is shown all their cards to the team, the one team in the NFC that they ended up. And part of it is probably that they didn't expect to have to play the Giants again. I mean, the Giants
Right.
were what 10 and
Sure.
6 that year.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were at
Yeah.
10 and 6. They didn't win their division. But that's the thing. You never know. And that's the thing. Andy Reid doesn't take any chances. Like he doesn't show more than he has to until the playoffs come. And the 2007 Patriots might be part of the reason why. So
And the odds of the Chiefs playing the Broncos probably aren't that good. I mean, they'd have to go to Buffalo and win, and it doesn't matter. I mean, the
I mean,
Chiefs
but actually,
still
it's literally one game. Like the
right.
outcome of
Right.
one
It
game,
is.
and
That's
it
true.
is. So,
Yeah,
Right.
that's
so
true.
They're like
probably a
the
lot more than
third
playing the
most likely
Giants in the Super
team
Bowl.
for them to play. Yeah.
But the point being that I mean, you're not going to show teams broadly. You're not going to put things on tape. You're certainly not going to do it for a team that you could play, even if the
Yeah.
odds are lower. And you have to give Andy Reid a lot of credit for that. There's also something to be said in terms of legacy for Andy Reid beyond the wins, obviously, is that people actually like Andy Reid.
A
So anyway,
lot.
it is what it is. But yeah,
It would
great
be
pick.
hilarious though if the Broncos come to town and Bo Nix goes out there thinking, "Oh, I know how to beat that. I threw for 321 yards and four touchdowns against these guys." And
Mhm.
who who is that cornerback? And
Yeah.
why are my none of my receivers open? Yeah, that part
Uh-huh.
would be fun if the Chiefs go out and like just beat them 38-0. So, yeah. So anyway, so Andy Reid, that's my pick.
Okay. Got one
And
more.
then one
Or
more,
two
and
more.
this one will be hopefully a lot quicker to go through. So I'm just going to read you a bunch of names:
Okay.
Brent McDuffie, George Karlaftis,
I love
Sky
this one.
Moore,
Mm-hmm.
Brian Cook,
Mm-hmm.
Leo Chenal, Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson, Isaiah Pacheco, and Nazi Johnson. As you guys undoubtedly know, all of these guys were taken by the Chiefs in the 2022 draft, along with Was it Darius Kennard? He's the one guy that they drafted.
Darian
Darian
Kennard.
Kennard.
Yep.
So memorable. I don't remember his first name.
Mhm.
But I mean, what's kind of amazing, they took 10 players in that draft, and 9 of them are on the team. 8 of them are on the active roster, not Sky Moore, but he's on injured reserve, so he still counts as a Chief.
Mhm.
Um, if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, all of these players will have more rings in their playing career than John Elway. And if you don't believe right now that I'm going to tweet while the confetti hasn't even come down on the field yet, that Sky Moore has more rings in his playing career than John Elway, you guys do not know me.
Hmm.
Oh, Rany.
That is an incredible twist. And
Yes.
wait, is it back to me?
I mean, it will be. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
very
is
because
2022 class. They
I
are
have something to riff off of that. I the John Elway twist was masterful. I love that we would have, guys that have started off their careers winning back to back Super Bowls, like just never not winning the Super Bowl is an extremely funny idea for that rookie class. I'll go ahead and make my pick because I have an Elway related
Oh, perfect.
pick
We'll
as well.
dovetail.
I mean, he only has to get there, but Super Bowl appearances, Brady has 10, John Elway has 5, second place all
Yep.
time. Patrick
Yep.
Mahomes with 4. That's third place. That fifth Super Bowl appearance, he only has to get there. He ties John Elway, and I am telling you, that is literally, well, virtually, the only plaudit that John Elway retains over Patrick Mahomes. I want to see it snatched away. I still have people tell me occasionally on the internet, I mean, like the third ring with John Elway handing him the trophy. I mean, that was
Pretty
obviously
good. He
that
basically
that's
handed him one of his Super Bowl rings off
that
of his
that
finger.
silenced 98% of the haters. But the Broncos are a tenacious and ornery bunch of fans, and they are really feeling themselves the last couple of weeks. I pray for your sake, Rany, that the Chiefs are still in the playoffs and winning, and the Broncos get eliminated in the first round because the abuse that you will suffer here in the state of Colorado is it's extraordinary. But this is the one thing that people still have to cling to, the 2% that still are saying like, John Elway still had a better career than Patrick Mahomes. All right, like he's got fewer rings, he's got fewer MVPs. He never had any season remotely as dominant as in any of Patrick Mahomes' seasons ever. He never led the league in touchdowns. His one MVP award was totally fraudulent because
Yes.
Jerry Rice and Joe Montana split
Split.
the MVP vote. He didn't even win first team All Pro that year. He was never first team All Pro at quarterback. How
Wasn't
can you
wasn't that
not
the
even be
year
the
that
best
Jerry
quarterback?
Rice caught more
Yes,
touchdowns than he
yes.
threw?
Uh,
It's
it
so
was it was the year
That's
that
hilarious.
Jerry
absurd.
Rice had 26 touchdowns in
22, I
like
think
Yes.
it was.
12
Yeah,
Yeah.
12
games.
games. Yep.
22.
And he
And
threw for 19.
and
19 touchdowns in 12 games, and that win you an MVP
and
award.
John Elway won the MVP that award. Anyway, completely fraudulent. But the point being,
Complete.
I will take Patrick Mahomes tying John Elway in Super Bowl appearances and doubling him up in rings. Because then, I mean, he's already passed him in every playoff stat too. Let's not get this twisted. Like he's just eclipsed all of his postseason season accomplishments except for one, and all he has to do is get there, and we can just check that off the list.
I love it.
I
Anytime we
approve.
can bring John Elway up, of course we will.
By
To
the way,
recap,
Patrick Mahomes only needs 55 more touchdowns in his career to tie John Elway for career touchdowns
wow,
thrown.
Hmm.
that's
Yeah.
crazy already because
Um.
Elway played forever. But
But
we'll see
I
what's
in
in
kind of want
store.
Elway's
to get
defense, Patrick would have to throw 152 interceptions
Interception.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
tie John
he's
Elway.
he's got a
That'll
ways to go
take a
there.
while.
I
Yeah.
I think we could see how this is going to play out, fellas. They're going to, the Saturday before the Super Bowl or before the Pro Bowl, I guess, they're going to give Lamar Jackson his third MVP award.
Yes, he
Patrick
will.
Mahomes is going to be preparing for the Super Bowl, and he's going to say, "I don't care about MVPs. I only care about rings, team accomplishments, blah, blah, blah." But secretly, he's going to be like, okay, all right, well, next
Go
year,
nuclear.
I need to go get my third MVP award to keep pace with Lamar Jackson, and he'll just tie it next year. He'll just go out and he'll throw 56, one more than Peyton, and
Hmm.
that will also pass John Elway. So that's a
I love it.
neat little bit of housekeeping as well.
So just to keep track, if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, Pat and Andy will be second all time in playoff wins, conference championship game appearances, Super Bowl appearances, and Super Bowl wins. All four of those, they would be second behind Brady and Belichick in all of those categories. So, like, they're already on the doorstep of it. And if it doesn't happen this year, it's certainly going to happen at some point when in the next couple of years. But I mean, they're literally the second most prolific duo ever and knocking on the door number one. So I'm going to take for my second to last pick Mahomes doing something that Brady hasn't done. And that's hard to do, obviously. But the three-peat, the fact that Mahomes would take the Chiefs to 3 Super Bowls in a row and win them is something that Brady cannot say. And I know everyone brings up the two head-to-head games, even though there were a lot of circumstances involved with both of those games. But, the head-to-head wins a win. That's fine. But Mahomes finally getting something on Brady in the postseason that Brady doesn't have, be pretty good. Be pretty cool. So I will say Mahomes having the three-peat over Brady is my second to last pick.
With Brady on the call, it's sort of like
With Brady on the call.
it's sort
That's
of
a great
a
point.
little bit like Elway handing us
Elway
the
handing,
trophy
yeah,
last
right.
year.
Yep, Brady's gonna have to talk about how great Mahomes is and how he's about to do something no one's ever done.
I just hope we get
And
the equivalent of the John Elway face from handing over the trophy
well, we
last year.
will because that's Brady's constant face. It's just a
I
constant
just hope we get
plastic
some sort
surgery
of
smile.
clip where they show the analyst in the booth and and Brady who trying his best to appear impartial. It would just be absolutely delicious if like you could just see it on his face that he's actually jealous of what just
Oh,
happened.
he would be
Yes.
seething.
Yeah.
It would not be a good situation. Okay, my last pick. Then we'll go Austin. Then we'll go Randy. Then we'll be done with the draft. We've got to talk briefly about the potential for the Chiefs to beat the Bills again. I mean, of
That was
all
on
the
my list.
teams that could lose to the Chiefs, that's the one that we could alter their franchise history. I mean, this could get people fired. It could have lasting effects on the Buffalo Bills if they play the Chiefs 4 times in the playoffs in the last would be 5 years or yeah, and lose them all. And it's just you know, some teams, I don't really believe that teams have other teams' numbers because things change year to year and players and all that stuff. But then I look at the Chiefs and the Bills in the playoffs and I'm like, well, maybe they do. Maybe that is the case. This would be an epic, devastating. I mean, Austin, you obviously just said that Lamar is going to win his MVP and then Pat will have to go chase him. But more likely, we all agree, would be that Josh Allen is about to go win the MVP. And if he does that, and he then has every tool at his disposal to finally beat the Chiefs, and they still can't get it done, and it's in the AFC Championship game, which it would be. So on the doorstep of another Super Bowl appearance that Buffalo is so desperate for, and they can't get it done, and the Chiefs go on and get that done and then win. I don't know how you come back from that as Sean McDermott. I don't know. They had a great year, and by all accounts, they like him. But all it takes is one more loss to the Chiefs, and everything they've built in Buffalo comes crumbling down. That's my pick.
I
So
love it.
I believe if the Chiefs and Bills play in the playoffs again this year, they will set the all-time NFL record for most um, matchups between two teams that are not in the same division over a 5-year span. They will have met, I believe, 9 times in the last 5 years
Hmm.
because they've played all 5 years in the regular
Jeez.
season.
Yeah,
And this would be the fourth playoff matchup um, in 5 years.
that's
I mean,
crazy.
it's kind of
We
crazy. And you
barely played
think
the AFC West 9 times. I mean, we're playing
exactly
10 times in 5 years.
we've played all those teams 10, and we will have played the Bills 9. And I think back to, you think of the just titanic rivalries that have formed in the sport in my lifetime. I think about 49ers, Cowboys in
Mm-hmm,
the 80s and 90s. And like, I think they played in like 3 consecutive NFC championship games.
mm-hmm.
Obviously Patriots, Colts, right? Bills, Chiefs is already at that level in terms of just like they've played 3 times in a 4-year span in the playoffs and
Absolutely.
are always playing each other in the regular season because they always finish in first place. And for that to happen again would be phenomenal. But like the Colts did beat the Patriots in the
Right,
playoffs and came back
right.
from 18 points down to do it. And the Niners and Cowboys, I think both teams got the better of each other. If
Yep.
the Bills and the Chiefs play fourth time in 5 years, and the Chiefs win again. I mean, granted, Bills fans know what it's like to lose four consecutive important
Mm,
games,
mm.
but still, that would be hard on them.
Yeah.
I almost would feel bad for them.
Yeah, I've had some conversations on X, Twitter recently about my feelings towards the Bills. And I don't know if part of it is the postseason dominance. I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. But like I actually kind of like the Bills. And I like what they're about. I love how crazy their fans are. I think Josh Allen's very likable and I mean I don't find anything loathsome about them the way I do about the Bengals or any of the AFC West teams or the Patriots. I mean, like I just think that I would feel bad for them. It's because it's them or us, so I don't feel that bad because they're the only reason that they're going through this is because the Chiefs are putting them through it, and they're in the wrong place in the wrong era at the wrong time, and that sucks. Someone's got to lose to Michael Jordan, and it just happens that this is the Bills. But I don't share a lot of Chiefs Kingdom's like outward animosity towards the Bills or the fans. I find them to be pretty likable. Just
I
wanted to say
think
that.
that I also had this one on my list. I think it would be wildly funny, obviously, to beat a team four times in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I would feel
So
bad
quickly
about it.
too.
I would feel bad about it, but I am actually going to make my final pick, and I'm actually going to see your beating the Bills four times in a row in the playoffs. I'm actually going to raise you
Mm.
to what I believe to be the absolute highest level of villainy. What I believe would be the most villainous thing that any team has ever done in the history of the NFL, and that would be beating the Lions in the Super Bowl. I think, I think
Yeah,
that, I think that
yeah. Slaying the
the
Lions.
the funniest possible outcome for this to end would be a team going for a three-peat, which has never been done, against a team that has literally never made the Super Bowl and has
Never
been
been there.
around since the founding of the NFL. I mean, this
Hmm.
is a team that and they were close last year. This would be, we can think back to just 6 short years ago when the Chiefs were playing the Patriots in the AFC Championship game in the 2018 playoffs. And they put out one of those surveys, that said, who are you rooting for? And the map is, it's Massachusetts is blue for the Patriots, and the entire rest of the country is red. This would be completely reversed. And, you would have presumably Missouri and Kansas, they're both stalwart Chief states. Every other state would be rooting for the Lions. The world would be rooting for the Lions. The narratives would just be, I mean, everyone would want the
Outrageous.
Lions to get over the hump and beat the Chiefs and not only end the dynasty. I mean, you would have the most lovable losers, Dan Campbell, the
Yeah,
moribund city of Detroit making its comeback, and at the same time kill the most hated dynasty in the history of the NFL, already more hated than the Patriots. I'll
yeah.
say it because
Era of social
social
media.
social
Yep.
media didn't exist, for half
Yep.
of the Patriots dynasty. They were certainly credibly accused of all kinds of malfeasance, but you know, did anybody ever complain about the Patriots resting their starters in the last week of the season? Hell no. Did anybody ever complain that that was unfair? Hell no. Uh, we never broke people in the way that we broke the Patriots. This would, I think, close up the entire sport. Like if the Chiefs and
Yeah.
sure, I'll put a cherry on top here. We beat the Lions in the Super Bowl on like
On
a
a
holding
call.
call.
On a
Yeah, right,
call.
exactly.
On a
Like
penalty.
uh
I mean,
a defensive pass interference
they
or a
might shut the
holding
league
call
down.
like we did against the Eagles.
They might shut
I
the league
just
down.
uh I just want to notch it up to the highest level of villainy that I can possibly imagine. And I literally can't fathom something more villainous than that.
It's kind of crazy to think that actually that kind of matchup has sort of already happened in terms of like controversy to for one of the blue bloods of the NFL to defeat the
It
ultimate
has,
Cinderella
hasn't
team.
it?
The
It has,
Steelers
hasn't it?
Cardinals is the game
Mm.
that I'm thinking. We obviously have the 100-yard
Pick six.
interception,
Yep.
pick six, and then was it
Santonio
Antonio
Holmes.
Holmes? I think it was. Yeah,
Yeah.
with the toe touch, but also
Yeah.
like I still don't understand why the NFL didn't put 1 second back on the clock and give Kurt Warner a throw from
Right?
the Hail Mary from midfield. There was almost, I mean, if you watch the game, the clock runs out and people just run onto the field, but he spiked the ball with time remaining. So,
Yep.
um, so it has happened. But yes, this one would take it to another level because obviously, I mean, Steelers are the Steelers, but they hadn't won two in a row. And the Lions, the Cardinals were kind of they were a Cinderella for about 3 weeks because nobody saw that coming. Whereas the
Hmm.
Lions have been building to this for a long time. In fact, what you're describing, I kind of thought was going to happen last year. I mean, the Lions were up
Yeah,
by like
yeah,
18 or whatever it was in the second half
Yes.
of the NFC Championship game, and
yeah.
I was looking forward to breaking their hearts then. But we had to find a different
Oh
narrative
boy.
to get a chance to break the hearts of San Francisco a second time, which honestly was probably more satisfying given the way it
Yeah.
happened.
Agreed.
Um, I feel like, there is an element of the Lions get there, they're winners no matter what. Like that's certainly the way I hope
Sure.
they will appreciate it because like
They've never
um,
done it.
they've never done it. So even if they lose, and obviously, the Royals fandom of all this lingers in the background because the Royals losing in 2014 to a team that had won two of the last four. They're
Yeah.
an incipient dynasty in the San Francisco
Hmm.
Giants, defeating the old time Cinderella team. The Lions make the Royals look like like a quality organization for the previous 3 decades compared to what the Lions have been through. But it's the same. I've been on the other side of that, so I have no
Yep.
compunction about doing it to them. And you know what? I mean, I don't look back at that Royal season and be like, you still can find the good in it. If the Lions make the Super Bowl, I hope that their
15 has
fans
a lot
will.
to do with that, though, right?
Yes, well, exactly. Well, yeah. I mean,
I mean,
well,
if we had lost
yeah.
that one and not gotten back, I'd be pretty butthurt about
Yeah,
2014.
I would be. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. Like a lot of wounds were healed by that. And look, if the Chiefs win a three-peat and they can't go back next year, I'd be more than happy to see the Lions
Same. Totally.
do it. But
Totally.
they're just gonna have to they're gonna have to pay their dues. And I don't think they've paid they getting to the Super Bowl would be more than enough for them. So but
Yeah.
that would be a fun one. Like it certainly I think would set the all-time
Ratings.
disparity record for like rooting interest
Yes.
of the fans around the country like that.
Aiden Hutchinson would be coming back. It would be, I mean, people couldn't contain themselves. It would be insane.
It would be a very very fun matchup. I'm not sure it's the one I want. I want the matchup that the Chiefs will most likely to win, but it would be a very very fun matchup.
Well, close
Rany,
this
you
out. You
have
got one
the
more pick.
final pick.
Yep.
We're back to me now.
That's it. This is
Okay. Well, it's only been
last
like
pick of
two
the
hours,
draft.
guys. So yeah, I
Right.
guess we probably
Right.
should finish.
Probably should
Okay.
wrap.
Well, since you've completely effed me with taking the Patrick Mahomes one, I had to come up. I had to come up with a different one while you
Okay.
guys were talking. So if I was distracted, that's why. But I think I actually came up with a really good one here because
Okay.
Patrick Mahomes has quietly, despite having a down year statistically speaking, he has a chance to set an all-time NFL record that almost nobody is aware of.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Please tell.
So, if you guys use Pro Football Reference at all,
All the time. Literally
you
daily.
will notice if you look at if you go to Pro Football Reference, look at the page for Patrick Mahomes,
Okay.
his passing, his passing part of his page.
Uh-huh.
You will actually notice a couple of numbers in bold print this year, meaning he led the NFL in. You see a couple of
Fourth quarter comebacks and game winning drives. Five
correct.
fourth
Hmm.
quarter comebacks,
Oh
Five
seven
fourth
game
yes,
quarter
winning
I can see
comebacks,
that.
drives.
7 game winning drives. So what does this mean? A fourth quarter comeback is basically you win the game and you were losing at some point in the fourth quarter.
Mhm.
The game winning drive is you win the game and you were tied or losing in the fourth quarter. They're quite close. I don't know why they necessarily have both of them, but
I agree. I've always thought
but
that
they
was
have
weird.
five fourth quarter comebacks, which is very impressive. 7 game winning drives not only led the league, it is tied for the third most game winning drives in a season by a quarterback in NFL history.
Hmm.
Wow.
The only two quarterbacks who have ever had more. Kirk Cousins, 2 years ago, you may recall the year that the
Yes,
Vikings could not lose a
I
close game
certainly do.
until the playoffs when they immediately did. He had 8 game winning drives. And Matthew Stafford in 2016 when he was a member of the Lions and therefore did not get the opportunity to add any more in the playoffs. Patrick Mahomes has 7. He's tied with a bunch of guys, about 10 different players. One of them, Jake Delhomme,
Ooh.
did actually have a game-winning drive in the playoffs in 2003. Jake Delhomme, of all people, remember that the
Hmm.
Panthers went to the Super Bowl,
Sure
Yep.
did.
and they actually won a game in overtime. That was his eighth game-winning drive of the year. Had the Panthers come back to beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl, he would have broken the record, or I guess he set the record anyway, but he would still hold the record with 9, but he did not.
Yeah.
So 3 guys have won 8 game-winning drives in a season. Patrick Mahomes has 7. Now, we've already said we would love for the Chiefs to just beat the absolute crap out of every team they play in the postseason. But if not, if this is like 2019, or, well, 2019, actually, they really only came back in the fourth quarter once. If this is like, I guess, last year, or maybe the year they beat the Eagles, the last play game. If they win if 2 out of their 3 playoff victories are, the Chiefs are tied or losing at any point in the fourth quarter, Patrick Mahomes, in the worst statistical season of his career, when everyone's like, what is wrong with them? What is wrong with him? Will have more fourth quarter and overtime game-winning drives than any player in the history of the sport. Nobody's talking about
Wow.
this. Everybody should be, because when you look at his stats, right? We know that his stats this year are very mediocre, right? Adjusted net yards per attempt, a career low 6.02, right around the league average. Um, you know, 26 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, nothing special there. All of his numbers are very mediocre. And yet when you break it down on third down, he is still the best quarterback in football. It is like, you are not supposed to be able to play the sport of football where you can just flip a switch when it's important and play at an elite level and not do it the rest of the time. And yet Patrick Mahomes has done it. And we just discussed for a good 30 minutes how Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo seem to be doing it too. The Chiefs literally play the game of football in the regular season as if they just have, the easy button from Staples or whatever that they just smash when they need it, and otherwise they are playing with an eye toward the playoffs. It's something I I I, I don't want to say we should take for granted. Nobody should take for granted what the Chiefs have been doing for the last 5 or 6 years. Nobody should take for granted like the kind of player Patrick Mahomes is, where even when his stats say he's bad, if you just look at the context of it, it's not just that statistically he was putting up absurd seasons early in his career, but that the the context of high pressure situations, fourth quarter, third down, etc. He breaks the scale, right? He still breaks the scale when the game is on the line.
Yeah.
And it just makes you think the rest of the time he could be better. It's just that the championship maximizing move for him is to not do that, is to, test the electric fence, see what he can get away with, right? Throw deep balls
Sure.
to Xavier Worthy that can't connect, until just so that, when they absolutely need it, they've practiced it before, right?
Yeah.
Keep throwing to MVS all season long. No MVS
Ugh.
is going to drop it, so that when it's time you get the opportunity to put the dagger in the Ravens after the 2-minute warning, he's ready. And this sport is not supposed to be this easy. It's not supposed to be played this way, and he plays it this way. So I think it would just be hilarious if he, at the end of the year, everyone looks at him like, oh wow, Patrick Mahomes had more game-winning drives this year than anybody ever, and just let's throw that one onto his Hall of Fame resume.
Great way to wrap up the draft. That was perfect. Most fourth quarter comebacks and game winning drives in NFL history. That would be quite the accomplishment. Okay. That wraps the draft. We're almost done. We're just going to quickly talk about the schedule this weekend and just kind of what we want to happen as Chiefs fans. So we're going to start with the first game on Saturday, which is Chargers Texans. I think we would all agree that the Chargers are looking like the more dangerous team right now, and Vegas would agree. They're 3-point favorites. Does anyone have any desire in this for the Chargers to win it all, or are we all rooting for the Texans?
I mean, the Chargers are the team I'm most concerned about facing, period, in the
I
first
agree.
round.
I agree.
When you talk about, the playoffs and the importance of head coaches and quarterbacks, right? Like
Yep.
their importance is magnified. Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert, like,
Pretty
That's a
good.
pretty hard. I have tremendous respect for both of those guys. Um, I really feel like Justin Herbert is still incredibly underrated, and I might. It's still my hot take that I might rank him above Joe Burrow in terms of
Sure.
my quarterback rankings. But he's in my
Give
top
Justin
five.
Herbert, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, and
Right.
Yeah,
instead
exactly.
of Lad McConkey and Quentin Johnston, and let's swap their top two wide receivers and see what their numbers look like.
I
Yeah,
agree.
I mean, I would rather play the Texans, but you know, it's weird because they obviously have really disappointed on offense this year, but they were good last year. I mean, CJ Stroud obviously had the amazing rookie year. D'Amico Ryan, CJ Stroud, that's a pretty good, coach quarterback combo. I mean, you're going to see good coach quarterback combos in the entire field, with the exception of Russell Wilson and maybe Bo
I
Nix.
mean, Russ has won a Super Bowl and Mike Tomlin's really good. I actually think
Sure,
that's not a bad,
yeah, it's not
all things
terrible, but
considered.
I think it's a good matchup for the Chiefs specifically, though.
right,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I certainly would not mind if the Texans were coming to Arrowhead, and there is a part of me that thinks that the Texans, who won a playoff game last year, with a rookie quarterback and a first time head coach, maybe have something up their sleeve. And they also sat their starters in the last game of the regular season. They are also playing against the most cursed franchise in the history of
Ever
the NFL. So
in the history of
we'll see.
sports.
We'll see if the Harbaugh magic can overcome the Chargers curse.
That's
Saturday
fair.
night we get Steelers at Ravens, and Baltimore's a 9.5 point favorite. Zay Flowers is going to be out in this game. Lamar Jackson 2-4 versus the Steelers all time, 1-1 this year. And then obviously, the elephant in the room, Lamar's record in the playoffs, he's 2-4, and not just 2-4. I've had Ravens fans coming at me today. I ended up just replying to something and somebody's mentions, and they were like, "Oh, Lamar actually hasn't been that bad in the playoffs, dude. He's been bad in the playoffs. He not
Yes.
only is he 2-4, his performances have not been good. So obviously, this isn't just about the quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, but he's a big part of this. And the fact that this is a divisional game is obviously a huge part of this. We're talking about matchups for the Steelers. Like, weirdly, I think this is the best matchup for the Steelers in the first round of the playoffs. Baltimore's really good, but this Steelers team has always played Lamar extremely tough. These AFC North games are really tight. So what do we think about this one potentially playing out on Saturday night?
I mean, I would be surprised if the Ravens lost. I will say that, no one has more to lose in the first round
No
of
kidding.
the NFL playoffs than Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because,
Yep.
if they lose this, at that point, how can you trust Lamar Jackson to win any playoff game if he cannot beat a Steelers team that's starting, that has a legitimate quarterback controversy because they have Justin Fields, right?
Yeah,
And that
right,
has
Yeah.
right.
lost what,
Yeah.
three or is it 4 games now? This, it's not just
Four in a row. The last
four,
Yeah.
four to
right?
end the
The
year.
way they're
Yeah.
ending the season, if they go into Baltimore and beat the Ravens, and Lamar is coming off what, honestly, I mean, I don't think people appreciate that Lamar Jackson may have just had the greatest statistical season by a quarterback in NFL history.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Like
was very good.
Yep.
by adjusted net yards per attempt, which is my favorite quarterback throwing efficiency stat, 9.38,
It's pretty
Unbelievable.
good.
which is half a yard better than Patrick's first season. And I think he ended up being third all time. Second was Aaron Rodgers had a 9.39 1 year, but they're basically tied for second. And then Peyton Manning, I think, was number one year. But the second or third best throwing, remember, that is not counting
Mm-hmm.
his rushing ability when he also ran for 915 yards. Um, so if he follows up one of the greatest statistical seasons by quarterback with a first round loss to a team that's limping into the
Yeah.
playoffs,
Yeah.
it would be shocking. I don't expect it to happen. Yes, the Flowers being out, there's enough strangeness, and these are divisional rivals, so they know each other very well. And
Yep.
Mike Tomlin is a very accomplished quarterback. It's possible, and I would be happy in part because we would likely see the Steelers instead of the Chargers, Texans, and I'd rather play the Steelers than
Yeah.
any of these teams. So
Definitely.
that's to me the reason to root for the Steelers in this game, and not just to knock out the Ravens. It's to really ensure the best possible, first game for the Chiefs.
Couldn't agree more. I think the Steelers would get absolutely dog walked in Arrowhead, and we've seen it. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. Mahomes actually has the best numbers versus the Steelers in his career than any other opponent. He absolutely nukes them every single time he plays them. So that would be great, and obviously knocking the Ravens out, which let's be honest, they're the second biggest threat in the AFC. After the Bills, it's definitely the Ravens. And so to get that team knocked out of there would be fine. So I agree. I want the Steelers. I think it's going to be the Ravens. I think we're all on board there. And then we'll just wrap the show up with Sunday at noon. We've got Denver at Buffalo. Interesting matchup. Vegas has Buffalo as an 8-point advantage, which I don't think I would put it that high. Defense travels well in the playoffs. If Denver wins, they know they've got a date at Arrowhead next, which has got to motivate them, as much as you can be motivated as a 7 seed to be able to go and try and kill the three-peat yourselves. So, I mean, I'm torn here as far as what I want as a Chiefs fan. I don't really want. I agree with you, Austin, that the worst case scenario in these playoffs of everything that's going to happen, not injury wise, but just result wise, is losing to the Broncos. That is by
Yeah,
far. And I
yeah,
don't even think there's a second case that
no,
would be close. So I want to avoid that if at all possible. I want the Bills. I don't. I wouldn't find myself cheering for the Broncos. That being said, I could see the Broncos going into Buffalo and taking this game. I do think that's if you play it 10 times, I think the Broncos can get 3 of them. I don't think
yeah.
it's likely, but I certainly last time they played last year in Buffalo, the Broncos came away with a win, and that was with Russ at quarterback. So, yeah, what do we think of Denver and Buffalo?
So I think, if Lamar's got the most to lose, if his team loses, I think number two might be Sean McDermott. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
because Josh Allen has proven like
hmm
he can win, and I mean, it bears repeating. The 13-second game, like he threw a game-winning touchdown with 13 seconds left,
yeah,
and never
and
played
another
again.
one with a minute and whatever left. I mean,
Right.
he was
Like
brilliant.
he terrifies me, and that's the ultimate sign of respect I have for him. But I'm with you in that, like, I'll take my chances playing the Bills. Like, I'd rather see the Bills in the AFC Championship than the Ravens, in large part because losing to the Bills will be a lot less painful. It's not just that,
Yeah,
like, I think
yes,
maybe the Bills are a little bit more likely to beat us, but I mean the Ravens, they're a very, very good team, and they absolutely can beat us. So if I don't necessarily have a preference as to which team we're more likely to be. I mean, it would be a great story for the Bills to go to the Super Bowl. And
hmm
it's their only team here where I think it's like if we lose to them, I still might root for them in the Super Bowl, depending on who they're playing.
yeah. What about if
Those
it's
fans have
Bills
suffered enough.
Lions?
yeah. Right.
Whereas
Oh my
Bills,
gosh,
Lions,
or
right,
sure.
Bills
Bills
Lions would
Vikings?
be aside from the
They
Chiefs, if the Chiefs can't go to the Super Bowl, absolutely. Bills Lions would just be an absolute dream matchup for everybody.
What about Bills Vikings? They're both 0-4 in the Super Bowl all
That's
time. I
actually
Yeah,
Bills
mean,
Vikings would be close. Yes, you're right.
yeah. That
crazy.
would be pretty good too. That would be pretty good. I've come sort of full circle on the Broncos in these playoffs, and I think I've talked myself into wanting to play the Broncos,
Interesting.
even acknowledging that like if the Chiefs lost to the Broncos, like I'd have to move. Like I'd have
Yeah,
to
it'd be
quit my
rough.
job. I'd
Yep.
have to
Yeah, that would be
leave the
tough.
state
I'd
of
have to do like a
Colorado.
health check on you, like
Yeah, I mean, I
daily.
like I could never wear Chief stuff in public again. I'm not exaggerating.
I
On
know.
the other hand, I think the Chiefs would win that game, and I feel very confident that the Chiefs would win that game. And I've almost gotten to the point where, like you want to avoid low probabilities with catastrophic consequences, because the consequences are so catastrophic. And that's how I view this potential matchup. But on the other hand, it would be really fun if the Chiefs won. And, I think there's just a lot of reasons to expect the Chiefs to win that matchup. You'd have, a rookie quarterback, with a huge win. I mean, like this would be, I mean, if you're the 7th seed, you go to Buffalo and you beat Josh Allen on the road as a rookie in your first playoff game. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment in and of itself. You basically have
hmm
won the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
Uh,
no chance you can do that back to back.
then you come to Arrowhead and play the team that is pissed as hell that,
hmm
even that you beat their buddies, their backups,
Yeah, they're little
38 to
brothers.
nothing. Yeah, you beat their little brothers. And
hmm
you know, it, the narrative into that game, the bulletin board material, everyone would be saying like, oh, look at the last three times the Broncos have played the Chiefs. They beat them in Denver. They were a blocked field goal away from beating them in Arrowhead, and then they beat the hell out of them in Denver again. Like this Broncos team. Yeah, they just went to Buffalo and beat the Bills. Nah, give me a break. We would feast on that adversity. I think that would be super fun. And I think the Broncos have a legitimate chance to go into Buffalo and win that game. But if they don't, I hope that the bracket plays out in such a way where, the Bills and Ravens are playing each other. If one of those teams isn't going to get knocked out, I'm not even sure if that's not the best outcome, right? Like,
Yeah.
sure, it would be cool if one of those teams gets knocked out in the first round. There's one fewer of those teams in the bracket, but you're probably still going to play the other one in the AFC Championship game anyway. And you might as well give them,
time.
yeah, exactly. You
Right,
might as well give them a harder path to get there, right?
Exactly.
So I would not mind the Bills and Ravens taking care of business. And, as a football fan, I really kind of want to see that matchup. We've not seen that matchup in the playoffs before. And I think it would be really, they both have now one AFC championship game under their belt.
Appearance, yeah.
Josh Allen might get an MVP. He might not, but he's been right there. Obviously, I think you can make an argument that he's the better quarterback of the two. That would just be really fun to watch as a football fan. So I hope that's kind of how it plays out. And give me the Steelers or Chargers in round 2. That's fine.
So I like the fact the order of that the games are being played in.
Yes.
In the sense
yes,
that, like,
so fun.
Chargers versus Texans. So, like, if the Texans beat the Chargers, I'd rather face the Texans than the Chargers. So, if the Texans win, I'll be more comfortable with chalk with the Ravens and Bills winning.
Yeah,
Agreed.
Because
absolutely.
then I can focus on, like you said, what the best case scenario for the AFC Championship is: those two teams beating the crap out of each other 1 week before they come to Arrowhead. And I'll take the Texans. Now, if the Chargers win, then I'm probably going to be rooting more for the Steelers.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Because now it's like, okay, I'd much rather play the Steelers than the Chargers in that first round. And if the Steelers win, then I'm all for the Bills beating the crap out of the Broncos. I just don't want to deal with the drama of the Broncos.
Yeah, it's fair.
Like I said, wearing my Homes jersey in Vail the following week, etc. But if, like, Chargers win and Ravens win, then it's like, well, do I want to face the Chargers or the Broncos now? Knowing that, a Broncos win, it means we'll get the Ravens not beaten up necessarily, but at the same time, probably would rather face the Ravens than the Bills, just because Lamar might spit the bit, and Josh Allen has proven that he's terrifying in the playoffs.
Yeah, good in the playoffs.
So
Chiefs match up really well with Lamar too. We've handled him.
They know how to deal with his, to neutralize his running ability to, as much as possible, force him to throw into tight windows. So I reserve the right to, like, sort of change my rooting interest for each game based on the results of the game before it. So it's kind of works out in that sense.
It's the beauty of the reseeding in the NFL is there's a lot of potentials. You're not just looking at one team or the other for the next round. It could be all of them. So that'll wrap. Super appreciate your time, Rany. And if you're around, we plan on talking to you next week on the game preview for whoever is unlucky enough to come into Arrowhead next week. Sound good?
It's a January and now February tradition, guys. So we'll talk next week.